no longer just a personal memory. It becomes a broadcast, a signal sent into the vast, restless world of Instagram. Somewhere, someone is watching, scrolling, deciding, reacting, and that silent audience is far more powerful than it appears. This is not just about posting a story or uploading a picture. This is about stepping into a system where attention is currency, and every tap is a choice with consequences. Now imagine the pressure behind that small action. The user is not just opening an app. They are entering a stage where visibility, perception, and timing all collide. The camera icon sits at the top corner, almost invisible, yet it holds the key to expression. A quick swipe and the camera interface opens, sudden, immediate, almost impatient. The front camera reflects a face that is already thinking ahead. What will others think? How will this be seen? Will this even matter? This hesitation is not weakness, it is instinct. Because in this space, every detail matters. The lighting, the angle, the mood, the timing. As the user prepares to capture a moment, the environment itself becomes part of the story. The background, the light source, even the smallest movement, everything is evaluated, even subconsciously. The instinct to present something meaningful begins to take over. This is where storytelling starts, not with words, but with framing. A quick adjustment, a slight tilt, a pause, and then the capture. The image freezes a moment in time, but more importantly, it captures intent. And intent is what separates a random upload from something that feels alive, something that resonates. But the process does not end there. The story interface opens, and now the real decision-making begins. Should this be shared as is, or should it be enhanced? Text appears as an option, but every word must be chosen carefully. Too much text, and the message feels heavy. Too little, and the meaning may be lost. The user is balancing clarity and impact, trying to say more with less. This is where instinct meets strategy, where creativity meets restraint. The story is not just what is shown, it is what is implied, what is felt between the lines. Then comes the subtle but powerful feature, the stickers, location tags, mentions, polls, questions. Each one is a tool of engagement. The user pauses again, considering. Should they add a location to attract local viewers? Should they include a poll to spark interaction? Or should they keep it simple, letting the visual speak for itself? Each decision shapes how the audience will react. This is no longer just sharing, it is influencing. And influence, even at a small scale, carries responsibility. Once the content is ready, the final moment arrives. The share button. It sits there quietly, but it represents the final threshold. Before pressing it, there is a brief, almost invisible moment of reflection. Will this be seen? Will it matter? Will anyone respond? These questions flash through the mind in seconds, yet they carry emotional weight. And then the decision is made. A tap. The story goes live. Immediately, the dynamic shifts. The story is now active, visible, alive in the digital space. It begins its journey across screens, appearing at the top of feeds, waiting to be tapped, waiting to be acknowledged. The user might check back, watching the view count rise, seeing names appear. Each viewer is a data point, but also a person, a silent participant in this interaction. And here lies the deeper layer. Engagement is not just numbers, it is attention, and attention is the most valuable asset in this environment. As time passes, reactions begin to appear. A message, a reply, an emoji, each one is a signal. Someone cared enough to respond. Someone noticed. This feedback loop becomes addictive, not in a superficial way, but in a deeply human one. We are wired to seek acknowledgement, and Instagram stories provide a fast, immediate version of that. The user begins to learn instinctively what works and what doesn't. Patterns emerge. Some stories get more responses, some less. And with each upload, the learning continues. Now shifting from stories to posts, The tone changes, but the intention remains similar. A post is more permanent, more curated, more deliberate. Unlike stories that disappear, posts stay. They become part of a profile, a digital identity. The user now faces a new level of scrutiny. This is not just a fleeting moment. This is a statement. The choice of image, the caption, the hashtags, all of it must align. The stakes feel higher because the permanence adds weight. Uploading a post begins with selecting the perfect image or video. The gallery scrolls, revealing moments captured over time. Not every image qualifies. Only the ones that meet an internal standard of quality and meaning are considered. This selection process is deeply personal. It reflects not just what the user has captured, but how they see themselves. Once the choice is made, the editing begins. Brightness, contrast, filters, each adjustment shapes perception. The goal is not just to enhance, but to communicate a feeling. Then comes the caption, the voice behind the image. This is where context is created, where a story is told in words. The caption can be short, powerful, mysterious, or descriptive. It can invite engagement or simply exist as a statement. The user must decide what role the caption will play. Will it explain, provoke, or simply complement the image? This decision defines how the audience will interpret the post. And in this moment, the creator is also a strategist, a storyteller, and a communicator all at once. And so, as the post goes live, the cycle begins again. Visibility, engagement, reaction, learning. Each post and story becomes part of a larger system of interaction, a continuous loop of expression and response. And within this loop, something powerful happens: growth. Not just in followers or likes, but in understanding. The user begins to see patterns, to refine their approach, to evolve their content. This is where mastery begins, not in the first post, but in the awareness that follows. This is only the beginning, a glimpse into the deeper mechanics of how Instagram stories and posts truly function, not as simple tools, but as instruments of influence, expression, and connection. The journey continues, layer by layer, decision by decision, and in the next part, we go even deeper into the strategies, instincts, and hidden dynamics that shape what happens after that first tap. Part 2. The moment a story or post goes live, something subtle but powerful begins to unfold behind the scenes. An invisible system of attention, timing, and human behavior that most users never fully see, yet instinctively respond to. The screen might look calm, almost silent, but in reality, it's alive with activity, with silent watchers, quick reactions, and decisions being made in fractions of seconds. This is where the psychology of engagement begins to reveal itself, not as a feature, but as a force. Now consider what happens immediately after posting. The first few seconds are critical. The algorithm, often misunderstood as a mysterious entity, is actually responding to behavior. Who is engaging, how fast they engage, and what kind of interaction is happening. A story that receives early taps or replies signals relevance. A post that gets quick likes or saves sends a signal of value. And so, timing becomes a hidden strategy. Posting when your audience is active is not just a tip. It's a tactical decision that can determine visibility. But there is another layer to this: anticipation. When a user uploads content, they often wait. Not passively, but with expectation. They check views, they watch reactions, they feel the rhythm of engagement. Each new notification creates a small emotional spike. This is not accidental. Platforms are designed to keep users engaged, but the emotional response is deeply human. It's validation, curiosity, and sometimes even relief. As viewers start to appear on a story, a pattern begins to form. Not everyone who sees a story interacts. In fact, most don't, and that silence speaks volumes. But among the silent viewers, there are different types: casual viewers, loyal followers, curious observers, and sometimes even silent critics. Each one engages differently, even if they don't react outwardly. This layered audience creates complexity that goes beyond simple metrics. When someone replies to a story, something interesting happens. The interaction becomes personal. A private conversation can begin from a public story. This is where stories differ from posts. Stories are more immediate, more conversational, more human. They create space for direct engagement. And in that space, relationships are built, not with everyone, but with those who choose to respond. Now let's step into the creator's mindset again. After posting, there is often a cycle of checking and rechecking. This is not just curiosity, it is feedback analysis. The user observes which stories perform better, which posts get more engagement, and which ones fall flat. Over time, this builds intuition. The creator begins to understand their audience, not through guesswork, but through data and response patterns. But there's a deeper emotional layer here as well. Every piece of content carries a small piece of the creator's identity. When a story performs well, it feels like validation. When it doesn't, it can feel like a missed opportunity. This emotional connection is what makes content creation both powerful and challenging. It's not just about uploading, it's about being seen. Switching back to the technical side, let's talk about how stories can be enhanced before posting. The interface offers tools that are deceptively simple but highly impactful. Text allows expression, but placement matters. A poorly placed text can hide important parts of the image. A well-placed one can guide the viewer's attention. This is where design thinking comes into play, even in casual posting. Filters and effects are another layer of decision-making. They don't just change colors, they change mood. A warm filter creates comfort, a cool tone can create distance or calmness, and a high contrast effect can make content stand out. These choices, while small, influence how the audience feels when they view the content. And feeling drives engagement more than anything else. Now consider interactive elements like polls and questions. These are not just features. They are engagement triggers. When a user adds a poll, they invite participation. This changes the dynamic from passive viewing to active interaction. Suddenly, the viewer is not just watching, they are contributing. And when people feel involved, they are more likely to stay engaged with future content. Mentions and tags introduce another dimension. By tagging someone, the user creates a connection between audiences. This can expand reach, but it also carries social implications. It's a form of acknowledgement, recognition, or sometimes promotion. And every tag has meaning. It's not just a function, it's a statement. Now let's zoom out and look at posts again, but from a strategic perspective. A post lives longer than a story, which means its impact extends over time. This changes how it should be crafted. The content must be strong enough to hold attention not just for a moment, but across hours or even days. This is where consistency and quality become critical. Captions play a major role here. They can tell a story, ask a question, or simply provide context. A strong caption can increase engagement significantly because it invites interaction. And interaction, once again, is the key driver of visibility. The more people interact, the more the content spreads. Hashtags are another powerful tool, often underestimated. They act as discovery channels. When used correctly, they can place a post in front of audiences who are not already following the account. But relevance is key. Random hashtags don't help. Strategic ones do. The goal is not just reach, it's the right reach. There is also an emotional strategy at play. Some creators choose to post content that evokes curiosity. Others focus on inspiration, humor, or relatability. Each approach attracts a different type of audience, and over time, a pattern forms. The audience begins to expect a certain style, a certain tone. This expectation builds identity, and identity is everything on a platform like this. It's not just about individual posts or stories, it's about the overall presence. What does the profile represent? What message does it send? What feeling does it create when someone visits it for the first time? These are the deeper questions that shape long-term success. As we move deeper into the system, it becomes clear that Instagram is not just a social app. It is a reflection of human behavior. Every tap, every scroll, every reaction tells a story. And those who learn to understand this language gain a powerful advantage. But understanding is not enough. Execution is what matters. And in the next part, we will explore how creators refine their process, adapt their strategies, and begin to master the balance between creativity and consistency, turning simple uploads into meaningful impact. Part 3. There's a point in every creator's journey where things stop feeling random and start feeling intentional, where every story and every post becomes less about just posting and more about building something, an identity, a presence, a signal that says, "This is who I am and this is what I bring." But reaching that point isn't loud or obvious. It happens quietly after many small observations, mistakes, and subtle realizations that most people never notice. And it all begins with one question: why did that last post work? And the one before that didn't. This question becomes a turning point, because once a creator starts asking it, they stop behaving like a casual user and start behaving like an analyst. They begin to study patterns, not in a technical sense, but in a behavioral one. They look at what time they posted, what kind of content it was, what emotion it carried, how people responded, and most importantly, how it made the audience feel. Because in this ecosystem, feelings are the real metric, even if the numbers tell a different story. Now imagine a creator scrolling through their own profile, not as the person who made the content, but as a first-time visitor. This shift in perspective is powerful. Suddenly, things become clearer. The profile is no longer just a collection of posts, it's a story in itself. Each post is a chapter, each story is a moment, and together they form a narrative that either attracts or repels attention. This is where intentional creation begins, understanding that every upload contributes to a larger picture. When creating a story, the instinct of many beginners is to share everything. But experienced creators understand restraint. They know that not every moment needs to be posted. Sometimes, what you don't show is just as powerful as what you do. This creates curiosity, and curiosity drives engagement. A simple, well-timed story with a single word can sometimes perform better than a long, detailed one. Why? Because it leaves space for the audience to think, to respond, to engage. This is where the psychology of interaction becomes important. When a viewer sees a story, their brain is subconsciously evaluating it. Is this interesting? Is this relevant? Should I respond? This happens in seconds. And so, creators begin to design content that answers these questions instantly. A strong visual, a